There we go. Hey there, welcome to ATL on 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin. Yeah, you got that. Kevin Chouinard. I'm here with Tyler Jones and Glenn Willis, and I'm trying to speed through the preliminary so we can talk about things like the Olympics and the NBA schedule and what to expect this upcoming season. Hi, all. Any thoughts about the schedule before we get into more interesting things?
They play 82 games.
Yeah, there's one.
I, the only thing is the Atlanta not having a home game on MLK Day. That just should never happen. So that's disappointing. But other than that, it's an 82 game schedule. It feels like the early part, the first, honestly, until like maybe even December, they have a fairly easy schedule. So hopefully they can get off to a good start and bank some wins early. So when injuries happen, if the wheels fall off again, like they're not in such a hole as they have been the last couple of seasons.
Very good. Any thoughts on the schedule, Glenn?
I think Tyler's right in that fast start matters for them. We've talked before about the fact that they have more depth. We'll say 10 through 15, 10 through 17, however you want to count roster spots at this point in time. You know, so I think they're more able to kind of elevate players that can give them a higher baseline of performance than what they've had the last few years. But when you're, in that kind of area of the projected standings where you're trying to go from people thinking you're 8, 9, 10, can we get to 5, 6, 7? I mean, it's hard to you run out of schedule faster than you think in the NBA. So if you start, say, 7 and 10, 7 and 11, it takes like a month and a half to try to make that up, and it takes a real run of wins to kind of get there. So I think the fast start is critical for what I think they want to do, and hopefully the schedule will help them kind of get into a decent position for that.
They need confidence, like even beyond the fast start. Like they need a confidence of what we're doing works and leads to wins because last season it felt like they were trying to play the right way, trying to play the way Quinn wanted them to, but they just didn't have the personnel, particularly on the defensive side of the floor, to execute what they wanted to do, and it just led to them also in close games, like not having just consistently not being able to play Trey and Bogey together at the same time was really hurting them late in games. So uh, those two factors, with the addition of Dyson Daniels, with always being able to just close games out with Bogey and that not being like a political issue or anything, just being able to close with your best guy next to Trey Young, I think is going to help them in close games as well as their defense is going to be able to maybe because I don't know if listeners remember the Hawks blew a lot of big leads. Um, and they blew them because like defensively they just could not apply any ball pressure. So if they went up against like an all-star caliber guard or player, like if that guy got going, the game just flipped on its head. It didn't matter how well the Hawks were playing offense. The Pacers game and the Kings game in particular just stick out so vividly in my mind where the Hawks just couldn't stop the ball. So hopefully with Dyson and Bogey, if they're in the form that they showed in the Olympics, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, in the NBA, it's such a cyclical. It's a cyclical thing, right? Even an average defense, when they make shots 4, 5, 6 possessions in a row, they get to set their defense. And I mean, teams that are not elite defensively, when they can set their defense consistently because they're making shots, put the ball through the hoop. I mean, you're just more confident in what you're doing. You're more confident being able to get matched up, and
Mm-hmm.
it really elevates, like even say a team that's 15 to 20 in the defensive rating, or 12 to 17 in defensive rating. You know, the Hawks not being able to get stops in the fourth quarter is just a cyclical process that just compounds the situation for them, and that's something that they have to be able to kind of overcome this year. I think one thing, Kevin, I'm curious if you like think back to last year. I thought Quinn was pretty aggressive in the fourth quarter, bringing players back earlier than he might have otherwise brought them back, trying to like find a solution. And so I thought he was forced to be pretty aggressive with kind of how he managed rotation in the fourth quarter last year, with not the options that you necessarily prefer him to have, but I got to get Trey back a minute and a half earlier or 2 minutes earlier, and then with 3 minutes to go, Trey is understandably kind of gassed, or getting Clint back earlier, and I know fans have all sorts of different views on was that helpful or was that not helpful. But I thought last year he really did try when they had a lead to try to find a way to kind of close the door as early in the fourth quarter as possible, but his options were narrow, and it'll be interesting to see if the roster construction this year will allow him to be a little bit more judicious in how quickly do I bring a guy back, otherwise, apart from maybe giving him the rest that wasn't planned.
Yeah, uh, this is a big question that I want to ask you. And if you need more time or something, I guess I could go first answering it. But I wanted to ask you, like, okay, Hawks start the season, assuming that they have players in uniform. What's the rotation? Like, who are the 9 guys that play, the 10 guys that play? Like, what's the rotation for the start of the season?
Give us yours first.
Me first? Well, I
If
mean,
you want, yeah, you said you.
I don't particularly care who's starting and who's coming off the bench. For this, I'm more interested in about who plays and who doesn't play, and what are the hard decisions. I sort of suspect that, when you get to some of the hard decisions, I think one of them is that, like, I don't think Garrison Matthew plays if everybody's healthy. And then there's just that whole weird thing about, well, Larry Nance is here, so what do you do there? And I think those are some of the tough decisions. But yeah, let's say Trey, Bogey, Hunter, uh, Jalen, and Clint. If they're not the starters, they are, maybe those are the 5 guys that play the most minutes. I'll call it that instead. And obviously, Riza Shay's playing something. Okongwu's playing. Nance is playing. And I think Veed is playing. And Dyson Daniels. So that's sort of like your 10. Uh, maybe I was wrong to say that Hunter is one of the top 5 minutes players, because it might probably be Daniels instead. But like, I think that's sort of the 10, and it's weird with too many bigs. Um, but I don't know. I think that's the 10. I think Veet's kind of important. I think they're going to try to work Kobe in, but I don't know that he's kind of a weird pinch too. And I guess that's maybe the other sort of,
I,
tough decision
I
that's got to happen here.
Kevin, I kind of agree with the rotation you kind of outlined there. Um I think Kobe currently is on the outside looking in the rotation. Like if there's like 11th man, like Kobe's there. Uh it will be interesting to see how Quinn manages his center room. I would suspect if they're going forward with Jalen being like the number 2 guy, they're probably going to try to pair him with a Kongu like as much as possible. But like that's beside the point. But I think it is interesting that there is a possibility that the Hawks don't play with a traditional backup point guard. If Trey's on the bench, they might have Veet and Daniels run the offense. I think I would not be surprised if the Hawks believe that Dyson Daniels can, for stretches, if he's playing, particularly if he's playing next to somebody like Bogdan
Yeah, he's
Bogdanovic.
going to have to play next to Bogey.
He's got to play next to Bogey. But I wouldn't be surprised if they think Dyson can set the table for Bogey in a way that's acceptable, or in a way that's actually more than acceptable, in a way that accentuates both of their strengths, based on what Dyson has kind of shown throughout his career. So that'll be interesting to monitor. Like, okay, if that's the case, is Veet even going to play? Like, even though Veet's like showed himself out, I think there's going to be a battle in a training camp, and then maybe in the preseason between Veet and Kobe for that 10th spot. But I think the nine are pretty locked in, with uh probably Shea being the ninth man, if we're being he might start, but he might also just be like the ninth most in minutes, if that makes sense. I could see the Hawks doing some wonky stuff with him just to get his confidence up, playing next to Trae Young a lot. But just overall, like, yeah, I think the back end is more, actually the back end of the rotation. I think is a more interesting conversation, because it'll show how they feel about Dyson as a player overall. If they think he's more than just a 3-and-D wing, if they think he's, still has those point guard skills and they want to develop those, maybe he's the backup point guard.
Yeah, there's so many different kind of combinations that are interesting to kind of think through. How does that look on the floor, especially offensively, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so Dyson has a skill set that plays off Trey nicely. He's a good cutter. He has length. He knows how to manage space. He knows how to work on the weak side. But at the same time, to your point, if Kobe is not necessarily in the rotation to start the season, you need his ability to kind of be a connective player, have some amount of initiation, and Trey is off the floor. That's a tough decision to make. Do we want to maximize Dyson's time with Trey, or do we want to have Dyson available when Trey is off the floor? It's important to think through. I think for me, I think game one, and fans on Hawks Twitter arguing, I think game one the starters are Trey and Dyson, Hunter, Jalen, and then I don't know who starts at center. To be honest with you, I don't know how we figure that out on August 16th, right? And then for me, but Bogey kind of makes whatever on the second unit work. I think Bogey is going to be top 4, 5 in minutes for sure, because he's just so critical to kind of stringing together offensive continuity of what they're doing, especially minutes Trey doesn't play. Now, I think is for me, what I would say is who starts game one. I think by the time we get to game 40, game 50, game 60, game 70, there's going to be some change in who's starting, who's on the second unit. And it's going to be, what is Kobe showing us? How many minutes can he play on the second unit? Is he ready for that? Ricochet, can we get him to 22, 24 minutes a game by the end of December, right? And so I think it's going to be a moving target around who starts and who's on the second unit. But I love that if Kobe gets hurt, Heaton can kind of give you a baseline defensive play that is there. For me, I think I look at Veet and Garrison Matthews, and I think there are times when they're going to need defensive capability at the point of attack. And Veet's an obvious guy to go to, especially when Dyson's off the floor. But you're playing down by 10 with 8 to 10 minutes to go. You might need Garrison Matthews' shooting capability to kind of get you back in the game on the offensive end of the court. So I think
Yeah.
there's going to be kind of a game by game by game situational kind of decision making for Quinn. He did not have that last year, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like between now and 2 months, I think we're like what 9 weeks from the season starting for the Hawks, or somewhere in that range, kind of acclimating to Quinn has options depending upon, are we up 8? Are we down 8? What do we need? Do we need more defense? Do we need more offense right now? That's something Quinn did not have. Quinn had what he had last year, and he had to try to kind of string together some sort of plan to navigate a fourth quarter. It often did not go well. But for me, like if the idea is Kobe's going to be their backup point guard game one through game 82, I'm worried about that. I don't think he's ready for that.
I don't either.
Maybe by January he's stabilized and kind of going, but I feel like it's going to be a moving target the whole season, and I think that's something that we and Hawks fans need to be ready for.
Dyson full stop has more experience running and all, like, even though like he just has played more than Kobe. Uh Even at point guard, even though he didn't do it, he didn't do it as much as you probably thought he would coming out of G League Unite, but he just has, like, Kobe has not played that much. Uh and like he wasn't the point guard at Michigan either. Like, he was an off guard combo player. So the Kobe thing, I'm not saying he won't play. I am saying like he's going to have. Uh, this is this is the season where guys are just going to have to earn their minutes. And the only thing I'm pushing back, Glenn, is I think all things being equal, Bogey's going to play the second most minutes. Uh, if they're trying if the goal is to win every game, Bogey's playing the second most minutes. If the goal is to manage Bogey throughout an 82 game season, then he might be 4 or 5. But I just think flat out like Bogey's like the clear number 2 to Trae Young. If we're being completely honest about the Hawks, even though I like what Jalen can bring to the table potentially, Bogey's just like he's just so much like offensively, he's just much more polished than any other player on the Hawks outside of Trae Young, and I don't think it's even particularly close. Uh, when you consider shot making, the ability to run a pick and roll, the ability to get to their spots as an offensive player, like Bogey and Trae are really the only 2 guys I would trust to be able to do it at a consistently high level on this team. So that's probably like a bigger concern about the Hawks right now. They really only have 2 guys. Um, I mean, they had him and DeJounte last year, but the issue was that you could never play. It felt like you really could never play DeJounte, Bogey, and Trae together on the floor at the same time. So it was kind of like, well, yeah, we got these 3 guys, but they can't be on the floor together. I think an important factor of how well this Hawk season goes is who's going to be the third guy to truly replace DeJounte Murray, what they lost from DeJounte. Will Jalen step up to the plate? Or maybe it could be Dyson. It could be DeAndre Hunter even, considering what he did for like a month and a half last year. Like, who knows? But somebody's going to have to step up.
Yeah, I like what you probed there, especially at the end, because Quinn has to play bogey 31, 32 minutes a game. Right? Something has gone wrong elsewhere in the rotation, right? And not say wrong in terms of
I,
like
Wait, what?
blame that.
I
Huh?
don't agree. I don't agree with that. I think full
Yeah.
honestly, I think if Bogey's knees were not a problem, he would play 34 plus minutes a night. He'd average over 20 points a game. He'd be borderline all-star caliber player. Like he is to me, Bogey has consistently, when he's healthy, been that level of player. The problem has always been you play him extended minutes, like the knee issue flares up and he's just the worst basketball. But like
Yeah,
I'm going to push back on the something's gone wrong because I think Quinn would love to play Bogey 32 minutes a night and not think about
you'd love for him to be healthy enough to handle that. So to kind of finish my point, right? Is Dyson giving them more than what he ever gave the Pelicans because Trey's helping him do that, right? Hunter took a step forward last year, but is still a very inconsistent offensive player. Can Hunter become a little bit more consistent, right? Is Kobe by January giving them 14 minutes a game of consistent play where he's kind of stringing together? And so for me, there's 3 or 4 players that really have a massive impact on how much they have to lean on Bogey. Right. So
it. Yeah,
for me, when I say something's gone wrong, it's not necessarily that this all has to be in place and reliable from game 1, game 10, whatever. But by January, you have guys who are doing enough that make you feel like, man, we've been running Bogey really hot. He's been giving us 33 minutes a game for the whole season. We need to back that down. If other guys are stepping up and giving them enough connective play, enough of secondary creation, enough of shot making, enough of Hunter can he get a little bit more consistent on offense? That's the stuff that really allows you to manage Bogey's workload to the point that you'd like to do it. And for me, and that's the thing for me is I feel like Hawks fans are like, game 1, this is the rotation. We have to figure it out. What is it? It's going to be for me. It's going to be a moving target
right.
across the whole season
Yeah,
because you got younger guys in the mix, and Jalen is a massive part of that. Jalen, you don't want to overload Jalen. You don't want to, give Jalen less opportunity than makes sense for kind of where he is to help him kind of step up a little bit. But that's a massive part of whether you can kind of manage some workload up and down across the season for Bogey. So there's a lot of moving targets in there for me that impacts the demands that you place on Bogey, and hopefully stuff goes well.
David Lee on the Believe in Hawks podcast that I listened to earlier today, he made a great point about Jalen where he felt like sometimes it feels like Jalen is coasting on his talent, where he's not, especially in the half court, where it's more he's too reliant on the fadeaway mid range, which he has a good one, but he doesn't initiate contact enough. He doesn't drive, like he doesn't look to attack and be aggressive and take the game. Like he's too often letting the game come to him, letting Trey set him up for success, letting other players set him up instead of I'm going to bring the ball up. I'm going to run a pick and roll, which he has not done in the NBA. I'm not saying he will do that, but I'm going to run the offense for a bit here. I'm going to get my shot here. I'm going to drive into the lane and generate offense for my team. Like that's really like if Jalen wants to be a max player, wants to be a superstar in this league, he's got to take that next step of looking for his shot, looking and staying aggressive, knowing that the team needs him to be more of a scorer going forward. And that's not to say that he can't do it, not to say he hasn't done it in stretches, but they need it consistently throughout an 82 game season. That is not easy. It is not easy to do what Trey does on a game to game basis where he's consistently getting offense, getting good offense for himself and his teammates. It's why Trey's one of the best offensive players in the game. But like, I saw a report that Jalen wants a max contract. I'm saying if I'm the Hawks, I'm not giving that to him unless he shows me something this season. So like, if it's like max or nothing, we're like, all right, Jalen, you're gonna have to go out there and prove it. Like, period. Like, we're not, if you want to be a max player in this league, that's a, that you can't be somebody who's comfortable only taking 10 shots tonight and not getting to the free throw line. That can no longer happen. You got to be comfortable going 4 for 17 one night. You got to be comfortable going 4 for 17, but you got to the free throw line 8 times or something like that. Like, you got to be comfortable missing shots. You got to be comfortable looking bad offensively because you got stripped because you're trying to do too much. You don't want it to happen too often, but in order to make that next step, you got to be able to risk looking bad. Like, that's just the process of how you move up in this league so that you can learn, okay, I can't do that, but I can do this. And I can attack this player here and get to my offense, and get to my spots and get to the front of the rim and generate open shots for my teammates. Like, so that's where I'm like, if Jalen wants to be that max all-star superstar caliber player that his talent suggests he could be, he's got it. And if he does that for the Hawks, we're talking about the Hawks are a different basketball team. But until he does, I'm of the opinion that it's Trey and Bogey is going to be the drivers of the offense. But if Jalen wants that max contract, he's got to be in that conversation as well.
I want to go back to something from a minute ago that Glenn said that I kind of feel strongly about. Like he said something about 30, 31, 32 minutes for Bogey. Something's gone wrong. I don't think that's the case. I think that they want Bogey to do a lot this season. Like he's going to be really important. He's going to be more involved. Honestly, he's probably going to be comfortable and more happy just from getting that kind of rep. Like he's not going to be rusty. I still think at the same time, like if you've got 5 games in 8 days or something, like you don't want to see 31. You don't want to see the total over 31 for every single one of those games. Like he's the first guy that you want to think about when, okay, this game's out of reach. How do I manage minutes given that this one's probably not gonna go the way we want, or we've got a big enough lead that, we could take somebody out. But I think, if it's not something where it's like 3 games in 4 nights, things like that, if the games are kind of coming every other day, they're going to be happy and wanting to have him in 31 minutes a game. But kind of along the same lines and what Tyler was saying that, Jalen's going to have to force the issue. They're going to try to build the team more around Jalen this season. If Jalen is a 36-minute a game player, does Onyeka become a starter just sort of via toss up because you like that pairing better? Like I'm thinking like maybe, more Onyeka with Jalen in the starting lineup. Maybe Bogey comes off the bench behind Dyson Daniels, something like that, to kind of manage his minutes. And then you've got kind of Bogey and Clint together in the bench minutes, something like that. But is there going to be a way to tie Jalen and Onyeka? Because Jalen just does so much for Onyeka, and any deficiencies that Onyeka really has, Jalen kind of patches up. So do you suspect that maybe those two are going to be together, and that maybe that somehow drags Onyeka into the starting role?
Yeah, it's the big. I think it's the biggest question with this team right now is who starts at center and how does that impact the way, for me, how you stack the minutes at the four, right? That is a big question for me right now that I don't
Yeah,
feel like I'm prepared to answer, right? So for me, obviously Jalen's starting at the four. If Hunter starts at the three at the beginning of the season, you have Onyeka, Jalen, Hunter. In that scenario, I think Hunter goes to the bench first. Bogey comes on early because Hunter plus Capella are really good defensively and can do a lot of really good work against opposing second units if that's how you're going to kind of line that up. If and for me, if Dyson's starting and then you're going to say Veet or someone like that being your primary point of attack defender on the second unit, having Clint and Hunter behind that is really strong. For me, and so I think Hunter's going to play a lot of time more with the second unit in that scenario. But for me, it's like, does Quinn pull the trigger and start Nyeka? And does Clint play off I mean, that is so hard for me to try to project that. We know Clint's a great teammate, right? But we also know Clint is way more consistent on defense than Nyeka right now, right? But
absolutely.
have the Hawks underserved Onyeka by not giving him more reps against starting units, right? I believe in Onyeka, but I think the path that we've gotten to where we are now, where there are questions about Onyeka's defensive consistency, are not all about his capability. It's more, there. I think it's fair to wonder about that, but I think there's some consistency and some opportunity that hey, he hasn't gotten to kind of stabilize his play on defense. So for me, I think my hope is they start Nyeka. My hope is Hunter starts at the three. I don't think they have to live and die by that the whole season long. But I want when the second unit's out there, Pella at five, Hunter at four, and that makes everything easier for V. That makes everything easier for Kobe if he's in the mix there, defending on the perimeter point of attack. So that's the way that I see that stacking up, ideally for me.
So, but if you say that, then how do you use Nance? Like, I mean, if you're going to use
Yeah.
Nance as a backup front court player, how do you do that and get Hunter minutes at the four? Like, how does that all work? Because that
The,
seems confusing to me. That seems like the log jam where things just don't make sense.
yeah, Nance deserves to play, but it's hard to play threes. I mean, it's hard to play
Yeah.
three centers. It, so to me, there's some move has to be made at the center position. I have no idea what that is. I would imagine Landry and team are feeling that out, trying to kind of figure out what might be possible there, what makes sense for them, what makes sense for another team. And I like Nance, right? For me, I've said on offense, I think Nance and Onyeka can share the same offensive template way more than Nance plus Capella or Onyeka plus Capella, right?
Right.
Because Nance can shoot a
Sure.
little bit. Nance can move the ball. He can make plays on the move, right? Those things. But Clint has been the only really consistent backline defensive player they've had for the last 4 years, right? And that matters too, unless you're just going to be like our bigs are going to be at the level. We're going to have more switchable lineups. We're going to switch 1 through 4 when it makes sense. And so I think they have a big decision looming. It may not feel big, or to people that aren't in the Hawks circle, it may not seem. They have a massive decision to make at the center position, and I don't. It's hard for me to try to guess what that's going to be.
Is there any
But it's a great
possibility it's move
great
Clint?
question.
Like, is there any possibility that it's move Clint? Because, like you said,
Yes.
Onyeka and Nance sort of share the same template. It seems like the template that Quinn started last season with was a sort of a Nance Onyeka kind of template, and it didn't really fit Clint all that well. And they kind of worked Clint in more as the season wore on, and they built it more towards Clint. But if you look at the way they started the season, it felt like they would love to have two centers like Onyeka and Nance.
I agree with that. Now I want to hear Tyler, but just quickly, like moving Clint is risky on some
Yeah.
levels, right? But the idea of Onyeka and Nance sharing an offensive template gives you an offensive solution that means I don't have to change the offense when one center goes off and one center comes on. Right? That I think that is underappreciated. Tyler, I definitely want to hear from you here too.
I was just gonna say that they didn't move Clint already would suggest that they're probably not, just because of a just how much money he makes,
Yeah.
and also the roster. Like, they don't have open roster spots, so they can't take back more than you know two, or they can really only do a 1-for-1 swap. And I trust me, I've tried to trade Clint. Uh,
We
trade
all seen it, Tyler.
I've tried to trade Clint in the trade machine, and I don't see the package that's available for him. I just think he just flat out makes too much money. He's also just too good to just give away.
Yeah.
So, like, I think he's going to be on the team. I think he's going to play a lot. I do think we could see a scenario where Clint maybe one game only plays like 13 minutes that night. I if Nance is still on the team, I could see a scenario where Quinn is playing three bigs, three centers, but he's not playing like Nance at the power forward position just because of the matchup. Uh, I do think with the contract situation of both Nance and Capella, Quinn should not be afraid to not play one of them, depending on the
Yeah.
lineup. But that is all on the prerequisite of a Okongwu is earning these minutes. I do think it's a make or break camp for a Okongwu in this sense. Like, he's got to prove him. Like, he's got to play to his talent level on the defensive end of the floor consistently every night. They're like, his great defensive performances just stick out so well. Where some games, like
Also,
what he did his rookie year against the Sixers in the playoffs, like what he did against the Cavaliers in the playing game, what he's consistently done, honestly, to the Cavaliers when he's been healthy, what he's done to the Pacers sometimes, what he's done to, like, Giannis in isolation, what he's done to Jokic in isolation, like his great defensive performance, what he did to the Rockets last year, his great games stick out. And you're like, if you can give me that against the Wizards, when we play the Hornets, when we play, like, every night, like it, like, not like, you're not letting these no names go through you on defense. Like, you don't let Giannis go through you, but you'll see every other game where he's letting, like, this third string center just absolutely demolish him, and you're like, what's happening? Onyeka, like, can we get more consistently from you from the defensive end? You should be one of the better defensive players in the game. Combined with your offense, should lead you to be flat out the best center on the team. So, like, to me, I think it's very important that Onyeka attacks camp and be like, I'm the best center on the team. I'm going to take it to Capella in practice. I'm going to take it to Nance in practice. I'm going to take it to everybody who's going to try me at the rim, you know, like, in practice, and really show Quinn that, hey, it's my era. Like, we are moving past the Clint Capella era defensively. It's now Onyeka Okongwu's turn. And, like, that's going to be on him to show and earn the trust from the coaching staff. Like, they're not just like, Quinn is not just going to hand him the keys. He's got to show it. And so, like, to me, if he's out there giving us high level performances on a night to night basis, he might play 30 plus minutes a game. He has the talent to do that. So that, I think that's something I want to monitor. Is like, I don't think it's going to be a decision. I think it's going to be on Okongwu to force a decision. He's at the right age range where a breakout should be happening for him. He has the talent. He's shown the production at certain stretches of his career. He just needs to do it consistently.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, while it's still we've got a long time of the off season before we can really, we've got plenty of time to talk about this. But before we leave mid-August, any thoughts on the Olympics?
Uh, United States lucky because Serbia had that game won. Uh, if Jokic was making his threes,
Yeah.
uh, Serbia runs away with the goal and they beat Team USA by like 15 points. They even in that fourth quarter where they were applying ball pressure, Serbia was still getting good shots. They were just missing. So uh, I I I think Serbia's winning the gold. I think Jokic is going to come away with a gold 1 year. So that's that just speaks to how good he's been. Uh, that he's that good. Like that Team USA, I agree with a lot of people who would say it's probably the best collection of talent in like basketball history. Like you look at the just Steph, LeBron, KD, like guys like Tatum is barely playing. Embiid, runaway second, the third best player in the league, is getting like 10 minutes a night. AD's coming off the bench. Like that was a great team. And like Serbia with really just Jokic and Bogey were going shot for shot for him. So I kind of wish they played a series because like I'm interested to see like how a series will go between those two teams, but that's something that won't happen.
Yeah. They're lucky to have Steph. Steph shot them through periods of terrible play, right? And then
Yep.
AD in the gold medal game was amazing on defense. Bam they didn't even turn to Bam at all. And I love Bam, right? And then the other part is just that KD made shots down the stretch that he doesn't always make, right? To me, like you zoom way out, who's next? Who's next up? Well, takes time to figure that out.
All right. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah,
All right.
good to connect.
Good
Good night,
night,
Bob.
Bob.
Good night, Bob.